Hello, I'm James Garner. There was plenty to see on television back in the 70s. It was a time of Watergate, disco, and leisure suits. The nation was changing, and so was country music. Which brings us to this woman.
Here you come again.
No spotlight could contain the likes of Dolly Parton, not to mention Kenny Rogers or John Denver. All of them helped Nashville widen its reach, bringing more and more country converts into the fold.
They came from the hills and mountains, the valleys and the plains. Some were kind and gentle, and some too wild and tame.
A string of British hearts on an endless ball of twine.
It's the same old train, it's just a different time, just a different time.
And now, Opryland and the Music City News presents Grand Ole Opry star Ronnie Milsap.
Here's the Charlie Daniels Band.
My name is Barbara Mandrell, and treat him right.
Folks, listen, here's Charlie Pride singing the #1 song on the country charts.
Sometimes I want to throw my arms around you.
The decade was the 70s, and the buzzword was big. Big stars, big crowds, big business, big questions. Country music was growing.
I think back on the era as being the time when country went through its first real identity crisis. It was the time when people were actually asking themselves, what is country music?
This era of the 70s in country music is very difficult to categorize or characterize. Looking at it is like trying to nail Jell-O against the wall. You think you have it and it flies off in all directions.
Stepping out of line and the lesson of my mind. If you had any sense, you'd quit.
You had country music for young people, the Outlaws, the rock country, and then you had traditional country.
On the one hand, John Denver coming to town, you had Olivia Nweton-John coming to town, you had Willie Nelson leaving town and becoming a star.
And then you had the new glam country of Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, and it was no longer just the South, just the farm, and just barefoot on the porch.
Ladies and gentlemen, Crystal Gayle.
Country music was in prime time in the 70s, filtering into the mainstream, gaining the highest recognition.
Mr. President, it's an honor to have you at the new Grand Ole Opry House.
For some of country's favorite singers, it was a decade of renewed success. Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn combined their star power and together shone even brighter.
Conway and Loretta were just fantastic on stage together.
They were named country music's favorite duo.
Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn.
Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn.
4 years in a row.
Conway Twitty, Loretta Lynn.
Conway Twitty and Loretta Lynn.
Oh, mercy. Yeah. Golden rain, but one time is gone. Yes, the sun.
George Jones and Tammy Wynette, another favorite team, enthralled fans with chart-topping confessions of their very stormy marriage.
And when we get behind closed doors, when she lets her hand down.
And teamed with producer Billy Sherrill, Charlie Rich found a lush country sound in the 70s that would cross over to the pop charts and earn the Silver Fox a fortune. But the marriage between country and pop was not entirely happy. Not for Charlie Rich, and not, some thought, for country music.
It was a lead-in to what eventually was going to become a very, very angry situation as it progressed.
The idea was to make country music palatable to as many people as possible. They had changed the music to where it would not sound whiny and twangy to people.
Country has always been about where middle America was, and by the 1970s, those people were starting to head for the mall. So country started to go for the mall.
Will a circle be unbroken?
And nowhere was country's changing image more clearly demonstrated than when the beloved Ryman Auditorium closed in 1974.
Goodbye, Goodbye, dear old Ryman.
And the Opryland theme park opened.
Nashville was trying very hard to divorce itself from its hillbilly roots and to be uptown and be modern.
The new Opry House symbolized all that was good and all that was bad about country's changing image. It was a far cry from the mother church of country music, but what it lacked in charm, it made up in comfort, providing a bigger home to country's growing family.
Country was that in the 70s. It was a place where just a tremendous variety of artists could find a home.
For me personally, I think it was an era of wonderful exploration.
At that time, you know, I was kind of experimenting, wanted to kind of spread my wings and like everybody's doing now.
It's just a time that I'm so happy to be a part of that history.
There were some great songs that still stand by today's standards, and I don't think that period today is looked on as positively as it should be for what it did for country music and expanding country music. It brought a new exposure to all artists, not just the crossover artists.
Big stars, big crowds, big business. And in the 1970s, no one demonstrated the potential power of country better than Dolly Parton.
She records Here You Come Again, becomes a huge pop star with it, everything else. Nashville goes ballistic. They go postal on her going, "You're leaving country music."
Hey boy, what you doing down there?
Leaving or taking the music to even greater heights? It was country's question of the decade, and Dolly Parton would have some answers.
I mean, here's a woman who comes from dirt poor, rural Appalachia, who by 1980 was starring in 9 to 5.
And I love you. Oh, my darling, come again. Just when I'm about to get myself too good, you walk right in the door, just like you've done before, and wrap my heart round your little finger.
Dolly was one of the first ladies to come along, and she just didn't care what people thought. And she made a real strong statement about that in her presence alone.
If you like her on television, you will love her if you meet her. If you don't like her on television, you will hate her because she has everything and more that you see on television.
Did you have plastic surgery?
Well, yes, I have had several little things done through the years, and several big ones.
When Linda Ronstadt and I first met, the first thing we asked each other was, "Who's your favorite girl singer?" And we both said Dolly Parton.
Now then, I want to bring the little gal out here that her and I recorded a lot of duets together, Miss Dolly.
From girl singer
Oh, why do we keep holding on?
to country star
Your smile is like a breath of spring. Your voice is soft like summer rain.
to pop phenomenon
Oh, my darling, up 3 times on the ceiling if you want me.
to superstar. Dolly Parton's meteoric rise in the 70s blazed a country trail from Nashville to Hollywood.
There really is no greater example of what was happening in country music in the 1970s than Dolly Parton. I mean, here's a woman who comes from dirt poor, rural Appalachia, who by 1980 was starring in 9 to 5. By the end of the decade, she's all rhinestone girled out and living in her $1,000 wigs and beginning to sort of embody the Hollywoodization, the new glam face of country music.
She knew what she wanted and still does, I think, and she works real hard for that.
Nothing was going to stop Dolly Rebecca Parton. Just one day after high school graduation, she boarded a bus for Nashville.
I had a morning show on Channel 4 in Nashville. Dolly came on. She sang an old George Jones song. It was up-tempo, and she just wowed everybody. She knocked me down.
No amount of money could buy from me the memories that I have of them.
Armed with talent, ambition, and head-spinning good looks, Dolly soon caught Porter Wagner's eye and the biggest break of her young career. Wagner was looking for a singer to replace his enormously popular partner, Norma Jean.
The word had got around that I was looking for a girl singer to be a part of the Porter Wagner television show. Dolly called and set up an appointment to come and audition. She sang a bunch of songs for me, and I said, "Do you know many hymns?" And she sat there for a second. She said, "Many hymns." Said, "Who does she sew for?" She thought I was talking about a seamstress.
And Judd got this for me so we could kind of make us about the same height, okay?
I believe it.
So if that's all right, how do we look?
That looks good.
I was always impressed with Dolly and still am till today. She's great.
Fans thought they were great together, and Porter Wagner and Dolly Parton quickly became one of country music's most popular duets. But at the same time, Dolly was writing and releasing her own singles, childhood memories inspiring some of her biggest hits.
I'd like to do a song for you now that tells a true story about one of my most memorable childhood memories. It's a song called The Coat of Many Colors. Back through the years I go wandering once again, back to the seasons of my youth.
The fourth of 12 children, Dolly had grown up in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, where music and poverty were a way of life.
The rags to use.
Based on a memory of the coat her mother made from colorful scraps of quilt, Coat of Many Colors climbed to number 4 on the country charts in 1971 and was one of more than 3,000 songs Dolly Parton would write.
That's what the public saw in her, the tremendous depth of her songwriting talent, the spirit that's in there, the humor that's in there, the wit, the native intelligence that's in there is just something that shines through her.
Her fans included other stars as well.
Kenny Rogers!
I think every now and then you run across someone that you really have good personal chemistry with.
Let's get serious. This one's too pretty to mess up. In the twilight, oh, I see you.
From Kenny Rogers
Come in here. Silver thread.
to Emmylou Harris and Linda Ronstadt.
This heart of mine.
I called Linda and I said, "You got to come over here because Dolly Parton is coming over." So we just met and talked for a little bit, and then we did what any 3 girl singers would do. We got a guitar and we sat down and we sang something.
By the early 70s, Dolly already was a country star she'd hoped to be. She had made it in just a few short years, and now she was reaching for more.
Now, I think that life should be just one big glamorous fairy tale where strange, unreal things happen. Love is like a butterfly, as soft and gentle as a sigh.
Ready to go out on her own, Dolly left Porter Wagner, and to the shock of the country community, set her sights beyond Nashville.
Nashville goes ballistic. They go postal on her going, "You're leaving country music." And she said the perfect thing. "I'm not leaving country music. I'm taking it with me." And she did. She took that pop platform, that media profile that she developed, and cast a spotlight on the entire culture by doing that. It's a brilliant move, and it perfectly sums up the way country music went uptown.
Dolly's gamble paid off. In 1977, the small-town girl with the uptown sound scored a huge crossover hit with Here You Come Again. The album went platinum, the single gold. Dolly won a Grammy, and in 1978, country music's top honor,
Dolly Parton!
the Country Music Association's Entertainer of the Year.
I do appreciate that. I had this dress made in case I won, and about 5 minutes ago, I was hoping I wouldn't win because I busted the front out of it, and that's why.
That's all right.
So is it okay? My daddy said that's what I got for putting 50 pounds of mud in a 5-pound bag.
Dolly Parton, reshaping the image of a country star. But she wasn't alone in the 70s. Other young singers were also redefining the music as their voices began to be heard.
I don't see anything in this world wrong with anything that anybody wants to do if they can get the job done. Pretty lies, and pretty soon I'm wondering I came to doubt you.
You was wrong. I don't wanna be right. If being right means living without you, I'd rather live wrong than right.
You have to believe in what you're gonna do. Dream it, ask God for it, see it, go for it, no matter how much hard work it takes.
You've been talking in your sleep, sleeping in your dreams.
They were leaders of a new generation. Their music soared from country roots, but when Barbara and Crystal stepped into the spotlight, their kind of country left its mark.
Country's definitely my roots and a love, but you know, I love singing anything.
This is Crystal Gayle, my baby sister.
In the early 70s, Crystal Gayle was country music's favorite little sister.
Cold and clean.
And before the decade was over,
the winner is Crystal Gayle.
She was simply one of country's favorite stars.
As well as having this gorgeous long hair, she had a beautiful voice, just extraordinary, beautiful voice.
I'm a big fan of Loretta's, but they're totally different people, and the worst thing that could have happened would have been for somebody to try to make Crystal into a little Loretta, which she just wasn't, you know.
It's been a long time since you went away. I stopped to think of you most every day.
Recognizing her sister's unique talents, Loretta Lynn brought her into the business, suggested the stage name Crystal, then encouraged her to go it alone.
She told me that I should not sing her songs anymore when I started recording. She didn't want me to sound anything like her because she knew that I would not make it in this business trying to be another Loretta Lynn. And I think that's one of the main reasons I chose a little bit more MOR, you know, the easy listening style of country. And really, she pushed me in that direction.
Teaming up with producer Alan Reynolds, Crystal found a sound that landed her on top of the country and pop charts.
We recorded songs we loved and we thought were very good. It wasn't going into the studio and saying, this song's going to be country, this song's going to be pop.
In 1976, Crystal released her first #1 single. But I'll Get Over You only set the stage for what would happen the next year.
Don't know what's come over you.
With Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue.
And don't it make my brown eyes blue.
And they were getting ready to ship that song to California for some other girl singer. I won't mention names. And Alan heard it and said, you're not sending that song anywhere.
I said, I got to have that song. And when I played for Crystal, it was exactly the identical response. She loved it, just like I did.
Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue was the thing that every artist longs for, that song that gets married with your persona and your voice, and everything just comes together.
#1 on the country charts, the song crossed over to the pop charts. The single became certified gold, and the album, the first by a female country artist to go platinum.
And then, you know, I'm winning a Grammy, I'm winning all these awards, and I'm getting to meet all these famous people.
She was named the Country Music Association's Female Vocalist of the Year in 1977 and 1978.
I won last year, and that was great, and that was enough for me, but this is super.
The next year,
the winner is Barbara Mandrell.
It was Barbara Mandrell's turn at the podium.
Somebody give my dad one of those heart nitroglycerin pills. It's in his right pocket.
I guess that the early 80s were where I really reached my pinnacle, but it didn't just happen magically, you know. The 70s were that building and getting there.
Barbara Mandrell grew up in country music. Able to read notes before words, Mandrell was singing professionally by the time she was 11. At 13, she was touring with Johnny Cash. By 14, she was traveling the world, playing saxophone and steel guitar with the Mandrell family band.
I really don't think that there was ever a time in my life where I thought, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up, because it's all I ever did was perform. That's the only thing I ever knew. I never made money doing anything else.
But when she got married in 1967, Mandrell left the business, briefly retiring until a visit to the Grand Ole Opry.
Well, quite frankly, I was watching Dolly Parton, whom I adore. While she was on, I told my dad, I said, I should be on the other side of this microphone that we're looking at. I'd really like to go back into show business if you'd manage me. And so my dad said, I'd bet my last penny on you, which he almost did.
Squeeze him real gentle. You gotta make him feel good.
She found a firm foothold in the country world.
Bob, I'd like to be one of the first to congratulate you on becoming a member of the Grand Ole Opry.
Thank you. Thank you very much, David.
But like Crystal Gayle and Dolly Parton, Barbara Mandrell was singing to a wider audience.
Another sleepless night, and it's the same old story. When you're the only one at 2 in the morning.
It's a little bit pop and a little bit country, and her singing style is basically blue-eyed soul. She's kind of a real perfect package of Nashville's aspirations. Blonde, beautiful, evening gowns, but plays banjo, steel guitar, and all of this kind of stuff all in one little dynamo.
On the eve of the 80s, Barbara Mandrell and Crystal Gayle were poised for even greater success. The audience was growing, but so was anger that country music was leaving something important behind.
She's 41 and her daddy still calls her baby. All the folks round Brownsville say she's crazy.
She was young, she was cool, she was Tanya Tucker, and she was causing a commotion.
Country music was really the root of me. But I definitely was wanting to experiment and do a little, rock and roll and different kinds of music.
She was country's teenage queen, and her image rocked the music world in the 70s, bridging an ever-narrowing gap between country and pop.
I'd been covering country for Rolling Stones since 1970 or so. And I could see that the two audiences were really converging. The country audience and the rock audience, at least big elements of it, were becoming the same audience.
When I was a child down in South Carolina.
Like Dolly Parton, Barbara Mandrell, and Crystal Gayle, Tanya Tucker was breaking down walls and changing the definition of country music.
Country survived and prospered by widening its definitions of what it was and who it wanted to appeal to.
It was broadening the parameters. Kenny Rogers was going one way, Waylon Jennings was going another way. It was broadening out. It was making the music bigger. It was a healthy thing.
And it was happening in more ways than one. Just as country was embracing pop, pop and rock artists were finding new inspiration in country. On the West Coast, the Byrds were among the first to bring the country sound into pop. Graham Parsons and Chris Hillman introduced audiences to the sound of country rock, and later to Parsons' protege, Emmylou Harris.
He was really fusing that sort of rock and roll person that he was. That was our generation, but he understood traditional country music and could sing it. And he was the one who taught me country music.
I was just a little past 18 when I came to New Orleans.
There's a sort of an atmosphere to their music that I didn't hear in other country music. It was kind of a hip, kind of approach to country music, which really excited me.
So you're going like, well, maybe it's not quite as separated as I thought it was all this time, It's just music,
That was Charlie Daniels' philosophy. As the big daddy of Southern country rock, he gave fans a whole new kind of music.
'cause I ain't asking nobody for nothing if I can't get it on my own.
People didn't know really what to think of us. They didn't know. Some people thought we were rock. Some people thought we were country. Some people thought we were country rock. Some people, there was really no name for it, actually.
Music has always crossed boundaries as long as I've known about music. And I don't understand, why that would be strange to anyone.
In order for this art form to grow, it has to be pollinated with new input from people who like it but would like to see it change a little bit.
Let me be there in your morning. Let me be there in your night.
But changes were going too far for some. And when Nashville celebrated top pop stars Olivia Nweton-John and John Denver as top country stars, the old guard said, enough.
Country music is a religion to me. If you're country, you're country. If you're pop, go to New York or somewhere, and get in there with them. Get it over with.
In a spaceship over the mountain.
Ironically, neither Olivia Nweton-John nor John Denver were trying to become country singers. But their crossover success was undeniable, even if the old guard couldn't or wouldn't say their names correctly.
And the winner is...
I can't read it. You have the glasses.
Olivia Nweton-John.
Right.
In 1974, Olivia Nweton-John won the Country Music Association's vote for Female Vocalist of the Year, defeating an established country favorite, Loretta Lynn.
It's a long way from London to Nashville, but I'd like to take this opportunity to say a big hello to all the friends.
Poor Olivia Newton-John. She didn't even know what country music was. The record company and the management said, let's market her country. She was from Australia, for Pete's sake. She came here and expressed a desire to meet Hank Williams. I mean, the poor woman didn't even know he was dead. And this created tremendous jeers in Nashville and a great deal of resentment.
In response to the CMA award, George Jones and Tammy Wynette led a protest of some 50 country artists.
I heard afterwards that they were a bit mad that this Australian and English girl had come along and with English music, with English producers and taken a country word. I can imagine be a little peeving.
I mean, they even formed an alternative organization to the Country Music Association called ACE, the Association of Country Entertainers. And their whole goal was to basically put up the barriers and put up the walls and, circle the wagons and let's keep this, to ourselves kind of thing.
I think one of the finest moments in the CMA Awards show came in 1975 when John Denver was named, I guess, Entertainer of the Year. Charlie Rich was presenting the award, and Charlie had been drinking a little backstage. And instead of announcing John Denver, he set fire to the slip of paper with his lighter.
My friend, Mr. John Denver.
It was this horribly embarrassing moment for this night that is supposed to be of brotherhood and we're all in this music together.
Most of the people here secretly, and some not so secretly, applauded Charlie for doing that. They were saying things have gone too far. John Denver is a nice guy and he makes nice music, but he doesn't really represent what we should be about.
What's wrong with the way that we're doing it now? What's wrong with fiddles and steel?
But when Justin Tubb criticized the mainstreaming of country music by lyrically asking what's wrong with the way we're doing it now, many stars and fans alike answered, what's wrong with change?
And things have to change. If you try to keep it in a box, it becomes a museum piece. So, if it's going to be vital, it has to change.
Music is communication. If you only want to communicate with a few people, then get them in a room. But if you want to talk to a lot of people, you have to go a different route.
While she lay sleeping, I stay out late at night and play my song.
By the late 70s, Kenny Rogers had discovered his route to superstardom. And despite the critics, he followed it to international acclaim.
You may lose some people on the bottom end who are purists, but you gain a larger piece of the pie by bringing people in who never thought they could appreciate an art form, country music in this case.
So I'll go trying faithfully. We can't fake it if it's real. Heart to heart, we can make it just by saying what we feel.
Music is a wonderful thing. I mean, it's I think those of us who make it don't always realize what an impact it has on those who buy it. You forget sometimes that people are in different places in their lives. And to be able to impact them and touch them in a personal and positive fashion is the greatest gift anyone can give anybody.
Playing to millions as if he were playing to one, Kenny Rogers sang songs for the masses. He was mainstream, he was country, he was musical gold in the 1970s.
That was a big decade for him. He took country music and did something else with it.
You got the kind of body that was made to give a man a lot of pleasure.
It was just a wonderful experience for me to come in and find a group of people who were accepting of what I was doing. My life just kind of turned a corner, and the next thing you know, everything exploded. I just kind of took off with it and ran with it as best I could.
From the time he was in high school, Kenny Rogers was running as best he could all over the musical map.
I've always felt that I was a country singer who was blessed with a lot of other musical influences.
He played rockabilly, jazz, rock, and country rock. But in 1977, Kenny Rogers found the key to superstardom.
You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucy, with 400 children and a crop in the field.
You know, every now and then you stumble into a song that you just can't figure out why no one else has found because it's so obvious to you.
You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. Okay, sing it with us now.
Lucille did for Kenny Rogers what Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue did for Crystal Gayle. The song rose to the top of the country charts, crossed to the pop top 5, and was #1 in Great Britain.
It actually worked its way into society. I remember going in somewhere with some friends of mine to a pizza place, and they were all singing, "You picked a fine time to..." So I knew then.
He figured out what his audience wanted, and his understanding would sell millions of records.
I try to find something, a statement in each song that can get in, become part of the public lexicon, so that you hear those statements. You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. Extraneous of the music, then they take on a life of their own.
You got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run.
The gambler, it's a philosophy. It's about a way of life. I mean, life is a gamble, and how you treat that gamble is how well you survive.
But for some country fans, Kenny himself was seen as a gamble Rogers was winning, and the country music purists were not.
I feel like I was what I represented. There were no surprises. If it's a country song, I do it as country as I'm comfortable with. There's a line to where I feel, guys, that is more country than I'm really comfortable being.
The world needs a melody.
So country music was his instrument to this worldwide sensation that he was. And, I for one appreciate all he's done for our music.
And country music was at the root of everything I'd done. And I guess if nothing else, it instilled in me the wonder of what music can do to people and how it can bring people together.
It was a wonder shared by another country star in the 70s who also changed the face of country music.
So I laid out the program, and I'd put myself down following Charlie Pride. First night, they were halfway through my show, they're still screaming for Charlie. So I knew that he had something.
Oh, and the gun I held was trembling in my hand.
I said, well, but I want to go to the major leagues and set all the records there and break new ones by the time I was 35.
If Charlie Pride's boyhood dream had come true, this would be a story about a major league ball player.
And I do love the game.
A story about an athlete with a shot at the Baseball Hall of Fame.
And, I could run pretty good. I could hit, always could hit. I was a good pitcher.
But how good, baseball fans will never know.
But it didn't work out that way.
Instead, country music fans would discover Pride's pitch was perfect.
I knew that he had something, and he got out there and he talked to him, and he said, you either like me or you don't, and they loved it.
I went to see him when I was 11 years old at the Arizona State Fair, and man, he brought the house down.
Charlie! He had it, and sometimes it's hard to define what they had. It was just something that met the ear, the heart, the mind, the taste that you liked.
Just pull it down. But the man who would go on to win top country honors in 1971.
The entertainer of the year, yeah, he's due. Ladies and gentlemen, my buddy, Mr. Charlie Pride.
The entertainer who was ranked one of the 3 most popular country artists in the 1970s never thought his ability to sing was anything unusual.
I just thought everybody could sing. I thought it was like eating breakfast. But I found out that some people can run faster than others, some can sing, some can't carry a tune, and so you learn that as you grow up, you know.
Son of a sharecropper, one of 11 children, Charlie Pride grew up in a 3-room house in Sledge, Mississippi. He got his first guitar at 14, and Saturday nights, the Grand Ole Opry was a welcome break from picking cotton.
Here we are with our show for our friends and neighbors throughout America.
Music, country music, was a part of life in Sledge, but baseball was a way out.
Then I saw Jackie Robinson go to Major Leagues. I said, hi, here's my way out of the cotton fields.
Still a teenager, Pride joined the Negro American League and played in the minors for most of the next 10 years. He left Sledge far behind, but the music from home stayed with him.
I would go on stage in different towns. Sometime we'd play baseball. I'd go up and sing a few songs and things like that, and people say, pretty good, you know, you ought to think about going into music.
But Charlie Pride could not let go of his major league dream.
I felt I still could make it in baseball. That was going to be my way out.
After a decade of trying to make it, Pride was desperate but still determined. In 1963, he tried to join the New York Mets and showed up at spring training uninvited. But legendary manager Casey Stengel was unimpressed. Pride's strategy failed. He struck out. His career in baseball was over.
My old heart just sank just like that, you know. So I remember saying, one of these days you're going to hear about me. I mean, something like that I said. So I got my bats and all the rest of my stuff, and I took off. And that's when I stopped by Nashville.
Charlie Pride.
The rest, as they say, is history.
From the time that I had gone down to the Mets and came through Nashville, my whole life changed. It did. Sure did.
Sometimes I want to die.
Instead of hitting the ball out of the park, the ex-minor leaguer was soon knocking other people's songs off the charts and racking up the awards.
Is anybody going to San Antonio, Huntington, West Virginia?
Charlie Pride was second only to Elvis Presley as RCA's top-selling artist of the 70s. He hit #1 on the country charts an astonishing 36 times. But his new profession was not without challenges. When Pride first arrived in Nashville, he was constantly reminded that no one knew what to make of a black country singer.
I said, what kind of music do you sing? And he said, country. And that's the point I thought that someone was kidding me.
Oh, the snakes crawl at night. That's what they say.
Pride's talent was undeniable, but he had record executives perplexed.
We had about an hour discussion. Should we let the people know he's black?
Their solution? Promote Pride's voice, not his face.
And we finally decided just put it out. If they like it and play it, fine, and they can find out for themselves. And so that's what we did, and it turned out great.
His star was rising, but many fans had no idea what Charlie Pride looked like until they saw him in person.
There's so many stories about Pride. We were in Detroit at Cobo Hall, and I could tell this crowd was wired. They were just fired up to hear country music. Now I'm getting ready to bring on Pride, and this is how it happened.
So Ralph said, and now, from RCA, Charlie Pride. I come out of those shadows, up into those lights, and it's like turning the volume down. It didn't stop. It just... in silence.
He said, I want to entertain you if you'll let me. When he went off, they all loved him.
Pride won over every audience he played for, but recognized that despite his talent, he faced a barrier other country singers did not.
I like him, I like his music, and it doesn't matter to me that he's colored because he sings beautiful.
I had to answer all these, and still do. You know, why? How come you sound like us and look like them? How come you look like them and look like sound like us?
I don't try to understand.
It's my music, too. We're glad to have you in our music. Some people will say that. I said, but it's my music, too.
There wasn't any blacks in our business at that time, and still isn't. He stood out, but I'll tell you what, he stood out for a lot more reasons than just being black. He had a lot of talent.
Them old cotton fields back home, have a good time.
Casey Stengel may never have known what he gave to country music. And Charlie Pride succeeded in life in a way he never imagined.
This year's Living Legend Award, my buddy and my friend, Charlie Pride.
In 1997, he received the TNN Music City News Living Legend Award, a tribute to his music and his life.
To do something you love to do, something you love to do, and make a good living at it, seemingly make so many people happy doing it. I mean, that's a blessing.
But a first love is not quickly forgotten. Every year, Charlie Pride still suits up for spring training. And now the manager lets him play.
Lots of happiness. But above all of this, I wish you love. Good night.
What began in the 70s would spread like wildfire in the 80s. As for Dolly Parton, well, to this day, there isn't a disco ball that outshines her. A remarkable performer in a remarkable decade, part of this century of country. I'm James Garner. For more on the century of country, visit our website at country.com.